How you doing, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazings, but honestly, I shouldn't ask how you're doing, because if I'm going to go on a limb, I'm going to say it's probably not too great, because another year where we have our Mets ace dealing with an injury to kick off spring training. Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander step right up. Nope. This time it's Kodai Senga, unfortunately. So in today's video, we'll be going over what is the latest injury to the Mets ace for this 2024 season. If he's going to be on the shelf at all, how will this impact the rotation? Should the Mets seek external help? And ultimately, what type of injury could Kodai Senga be dealing with? Is this something that the Mets can monitor, and hopefully it won't be anything severe? That is what we'll be getting into from all the information we have to this point and then some. And of course, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you guys are new to the channel or a recurring viewer, as it is the best and easiest way to support the channel. Thank you all so much in advance, and also thank you all so much in advance from hearing from today's video sponsor, our great friends at BetUS. So you guys know the drill by now if you've been following along on WardyNYM. They are America's #1 sportsbook, as they're safe, secure, and reliable, and they got you covered with all your sports betting needs. Whether you got in big on the NFL Super Bowl action just a couple weekends ago, maybe you got in big on UFC 298 this past weekend, which was an absolute banger for my fight fans out there, or if you like to do NHL in season, NBA in season, MLB futures like you see here, that we'll be doing some awesome content with throughout spring training in March. Stay tuned for that one. Or even when we get into the MLB season, you guys can get in on action with me here on the channel with unique WardyNYM parlays, where we're breaking down, say I want you guys to take Jeff McNeil on 2 or more hits, Pete Alonso or 2 or more bases, Kodai Senga, should he be healthy, 7 or more strikeouts, for example, and then we'll break down those fun parlays, or those fun props and those post-game shows that we'll have all throughout the year. Rest assured, BetUS again has you covered with every type of sports betting need that you desire. So click the link in the description today by checking them out. That way you too get a 125% boost off your first 3 deposits. And I shouldn't say off. What I mean is if you say deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with, and you can do that 3 times. It is that simple, is that easy. BetUS coming at you with not only fantastic odds, but again, just such an easy way to play and get in onto your favorite betting action. So once more, shout out BetUS. Again, appreciate you guys hearing them out as always. But now I want to know, guys and gals, what is your initial reaction to the news that yes, Mets ace Kodai Senga is currently dealing with an ailment? What exactly is that? Well, apparently it's arm fatigue. Now, this is as broad as they come, right? We've seen this many times. Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, etc. We've seen a lot of guys with arm fatigue, and ultimately that means something more. So we know Carlos Mendoza spoke to the media today. He said after a side session yesterday, he wasn't feeling, the absolute best, clear arm fatigue. They shut him down. He did not pitch today. He's going to be getting further imaging. Hopefully in the next 24, 48 to 72 hours, we will have results as to what is the potential issue, if at all, with Kodai Senga. Could this be a day-to-day issue? Could this be something of greater magnitude? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, don't get me wrong, we of course are always going to think the worst. We automatically think, all right, great, our ace is down for the season. Mets baseball 2024. You love to see that. Trust me, I understand the frustration, and I guess for me, it's a little different this year, mainly because since the Mets acquired Kodai Senga, there has been clear potential concerns with his health, and that's why the Mets in part inked him on such a brilliant team-friendly contract. And what I mean by that is the Mets know that he has wear and tear on his arm. Again, this guy pitched a decade long in the MPB. There is plenty of innings and mileage on that arm and that UCL, which again has some wear and tear to begin with. That went in hand with why the Mets signed him to the contract that they did. And you even have former Mets GM himself, Zach Scott, speaking out recently earlier today saying, I don't think this is a big deal, but it's worth noting that multiple teams had concerns about his long-term health during free agency. This is 1,000% true. I remember going through it as we were covering the Senga sweepstakes together a year and a half ago on the channel. Shout out Zach Scott, again, former Mets GM. Don't be surprised if you see him, yes, Zach Scott, on the channel in the near future. So be on the lookout for that one, hopefully, folks. But let's talk a little bit more about this, right? Because Zach is certainly someone who has plenty of knowledge. Obviously, he's been in the game for over 20 years, and we even saw it ourselves. Again, when the Kodai Senga sweepstakes were happening, if you're reading through The Athletic, if you're following along, then you knew that there was some cause for concern with Kodai Senga and his health. Thankfully, again, this is very minuscule to the point where it's just arm fatigue. It could be something very slight that just has him on the shelf, maybe has a slow roll in spring training, but it's good to go for the regular season. But let's also not forget that the Mets purposely have a contract clause where Kodai Senga needs to pitch over 230 innings over the next 2 seasons to opt out of his contract after the 2025 season. So God forbid, at absolute worst, not that I wish it, I'm not even going to say it, but you know the common injury that pitchers have? Well, if that were to happen, then of course the Mets would not have to deal with that opt-out option there for Kodai Senga. So that is why the Mets had these clauses in this contract. It's all part of the deal. And again, they also have, Mets have a conditioned club option for $15 million in 2028 if Kodai Senga has TJ surgery or a right elbow injury causing him to be placed on the injury list for more than 130 consecutive days. Why is that important? It shows you that the Mets clearly have protection and insurance when they signed Kodai Senga. They knew that there was risks involved when they signed him. That's why we find ourselves to an extent in the current position that we're in. Now, I think the Mets did a fantastic job last season on utilizing Kodai Senga on an every 5th or 6th day basis in that 6-man rotation. They, of course, shortened him up where he wasn't relying on a 6-man all year long, but especially with the current rotation configuration for the Mets heading into the season, headlined by Kodai Senga, Jose Quintana, Shamanaya, Luis Severino, Adrian Hauser, and then, of course, you have, your other pieces in the Tyler McGills, the Jose Butos, the Joey Fuegos. The list goes on and on. The Mets have plenty pitching depth at the MLB level, but there is no one that is as uber talented right off the rip the way that Kodai Senga is. So hopefully, again, this is not too serious of an injury with Kodai Senga, but it does make it known that this is something that isn't too shocking to the average fan that's been paying attention, knowing the type of wear and tear on his UCL and his arm in general. I'm praying that there isn't a tear or anything like that, but let's not forget that this is also a fairly common thing that we've seen with MPB pitchers, especially if it is at all UCL related. Again, I'm not saying it is, but if it is, we have seen Masahiro Tanaka is a great example of a pitcher who pitched his entire MLB career with a partially torn UCL. He had a partially torn UCL when he signed with the Yankees, if I'm not mistaken, or shortly after being with them, arriving into the United States, and continued to have a very productive career during his time in the Bronx with the Yanks. So Senga's in this unique position right now as we're still waiting to find out further word as to if he's going to be out with injury for a significant period of time. Is it going to be day to day? We need to find out further imaging, but the reason why I want to do this video is to really preface that, yes, there has been cause for concern with Kodai Senga and his health prior to the Mets even signing him. So no one should be overly shocked or overly surprised by this. And we're Mets fans. Unfortunately, we deal with this where everything we hope goes right ends up going wrong. Hopefully that isn't the case here in Kodai Senga because he is such an amazing talent. We would love to see him carve up batters and have another Cy Young caliber type season for the Mets, in which he did in his rookie year. But now the question lies, right? If the Mets find themselves in a position where Kodai Senga is going to be out with injury for a decent period of time, even with how much a 6-man rotation helps things, what should the Mets do here, right? Well, I think this goes directly in hand to a degree with David Stearns' adamancy in acquiring a pitcher via trade. He was connected to Dylan Cease a couple months ago. He's been heavily active in the trade front all offseason long. We know the Mets could use another bona fide 1, 2, or 3 starter in this rotation. Does this kickstart things a little bit more? Does this show maybe a slight sign of desperation by the Mets in this scenario if Senga is dealing with a significant ailment? We're saying, hey, we really need to make sure that we add an arm that can help stable this rotation versus, say, just signing another short-term option in the free agent market in which everything that's currently left leaves quite a bit to be desired unless you are the names of Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. And this is an interesting discussion because Blake Snell, I don't see for a second happening. I think if Blake Snell is playing in New York this season, it's with the Yankees. And I think that's something that very well could be picking up steam if say, the LA Angels don't give him an offer he can't refuse. But in the case here of not only Blake Snell, but Jordan Montgomery, Monty's the interesting one. Why exactly? Jordan Montgomery just won a World Series, had a fantastic year. I would love him on the Mets. I think he'd be a perfect middle-of-the-rotation option for this team, and I stand by that. I said it all off-season long up until the Mets linkage with Monty basically stopped, but his ability to not only win it all, to have that championship experience, to understand New York and have the type of a very impressive stretch he had during his time in the Bronx with the Yanks, shows that this is a guy that not only knows what it takes to win, but can certainly handle a big market like the Mets and rekindle that relationship with someone like Carlos Mendoza, for example. But now we get on to, okay, Jordan Montgomery, is there any potential here? I'm not getting my hopes up, but I think he's an arm that we should watch now because naturally he wants a long-term deal. Teams aren't biting. The Boston Red Sox somehow haven't signed him yet when he's literally living in Boston. He's rolling out the red carpet. Just sign me. I'll be here. My girl's here to begin with for work, so I might as well be here, right? And the Red Sox still haven't done it. So if they're not going to be willing to commit to Monty, especially if it's, say, shorter term, high AAV. This is right in the Mets' wheelhouse. If they could somehow, some way land Jordan Montgomery on, instead of say a 5 to 7 year deal, anywhere from a 2 to 3, maybe with a 4th year option. I know the Mets ideally you don't really want to go past 1 year for guys to begin with when they aren't ace caliber pitchers, but given Kodai Senga's current status, especially if things do get worse, not that I wish it, but in that hypothetical where say he does miss a decent period of time, or knowing that, you know, this is someone that we're going to have to monitor so heavily throughout the year that we're kind of have to micromanage, that's where adding another arm really does make a lot of sense. So just something to bear in mind when evaluating Kodai Senga and his current injury status. And rest assured, once we find out more information, hopefully positive news, we will discuss that here on the channel in a live stream format or a video format just like this, breaking it all down. And from there, finding out really what is next for the Mets and their direction. But again, I want to thank you all so much for watching the video. Let me know, what is your biggest takeaway from today's video, especially in Kodai Senga here? Do you think he's going to have an ailment that's going to have him out long term? Do you think that this is hopefully just a day-by-day, short-term thing where maybe just as a slow roll in spring training? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure to drop them. And again, thank you all so much for the endless support. As always, stay tuned as we'll have consistent coverage on all things Mets all off-season long, highlighted by, yes, post-game shows are back this weekend, baby. The Mets play baseball this Saturday. I'm pumped up. I cannot wait to talk about it, even though it's pretty much meaningless baseball to many. It's an exciting time for a lot of fans, including myself. So stay tuned for that. Until then, have a great one, folks. As always, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.